Good morning and welcome, everybody. I'm Laura Grillo. I'm a historian of religions, which means that I teach this quarter of a program that focuses on the tradition, what we call the traditions, comparative religious studies and cultural anthropology, which means that mythology, mythological studies is not only about the deep interior journeys, but also about the real life encounters with the mythic imagination. And today I'm going to speak to you about Côte d'Ivoire, a place that is an intimate place for me. It was once my second home, and a country of great beauty and hospitality. In 1999, a coup d'etat erupted with a frenzy of violence, and a second coup followed in 2002. Tensions between North and South simmered for more than a decade, and then exploded again in 2011 after a highly contested election. And all through these terrible years, forces from both sides perpetrated violent assaults on the civilian population, and most especially on women. Organizations like Amnesty International documented heinous incidents of sexual violence, including slavery and sexual torture. But these atrocities went largely ignored by the international community and the media. Yet women have not only been victims. They regularly rose up and marched to signal alarm over the degrading social conditions and to demand an end to the violence. Then, during one of these manifestations, on the occasion of the International Women's Day in 2011, 7 women were massacred. This was captured on video, circulated on YouTube, and it finally grabbed the international headlines. But what the local journalists only referred to obliquely, and what the foreign press ignored entirely, was the powerful ritual rhetoric that the women demonstrators deployed. That is, the women often appeared smeared in white kaolin clay. They wielded branches, and the elderly among them stripped naked. Failing to recognize the deep mythic nature of this ritual expression, the press then offered merely political rendition of the events that, and actually misconstrued their true significance. In fact, women were asserting an ancient and widespread West African cultural principle that postmenopausal women represent the living embodiment of the ancestors, the guardians of the moral order. As such, they can evoke protective blessings, and they launch the deadliest of curses. They do so by appealing to their genitals as the altar of potent and dangerous power. This is quite in contradistinction to what we usually hear about African women and genital mutilation, by the way. In an archetypal ritual performed throughout the region, cutting across national and ethnic borders, elderly women regularly gather naked and smeared in kaolin clay, make libations using water with which they wash their genitals, and they chant and they curse using those who breach the ethical mandates. Historical records dating back centuries have shown that throughout West Africa, women would perform such rites to inaugurate kings and also to intercede in calamitous situations. It's been used as a public act of rebuke, and they would use it also to depose those kings or chiefs who betrayed the important social mandates. So in Côte d'Ivoire, women's political activism still exploits this strong rhetorical form, and again, to do the same. Let me give you a few examples, beginning with a notorious one, and one that's been celebrated by the state in Côte d'Ivoire. In 1949, there was a multi-ethnic coalition of over 2,000 women who walked about 50 miles from Abidjan to a colonial outpost in Grand Bassin on the coast to decry the arrest of national Ivorian leaders by the French colonial authorities at the time. And when they reached the jail, they stripped naked, sang and danced lewdly. In 2002, fast forward, At the urging of young patriots to resist the attack that ignited that civil war, a female chief of a Baoulé village organized 5 elderly women to dance à genoux, which is considered excuse me, a mystical dance performed in the nude, and in order to ward off this great cataclysm. They danced for 7 days until finally the rebel soldiers came, abducted, and killed all but one. In the next year, 2003, when the French foreign minister intervened to broker a coalition government in Côte d'Ivoire, naked women blocked him from exiting the Ivorian presidential palace, and they urinated on his car's wheels. In 2011, several dozen à genoux dancers appeared in the capital to protest what they called their children's arbitrary abduction by the army. And they brandished their loincloths to thwart the enemy. And then that same month, hundreds of kaolin-smeared women gathered in the capital to perform à genoux again, in order to condemn the deplorable state of the country's affairs. And according to the organizer, theirs was a spiritual combat conducted in a domain in which, quote, the strength and the power belong to women. These public appeals to what I call female genital power, to restore the moral underpinnings of the state, condemn its unchecked power, and they set in stark relief the terrible irony of the sexual violation of women by its forces. So what does all this have to do with mythological study? Well, to my mind, mythological studies is not only about story, nor about the ritual enactment of a story. It's the study of the imaginative appraisal of the world and the situation of the person in it. It's about meaning-making enterprise itself. And it's about the assertion of that meaning through lived practices. In this case, the women elders of Côte d'Ivoire are asserting their agency as history makers, their place in the cosmos as moral agents, and their efficacy as mediators of spiritual powers that deliver judgment with swift and frightening might. This is power. So mythological studies shows the imaginal world to be an inextricable part of the real world. It's about the way we live out our engagements and embody our commitments. Its power is also real and worldly power, and the stakes are sometimes very high.